Evening, members. It's now 7 o'clock, so I will get us started for the evening. We start with item 1, the webcasting introduction. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Please also be aware that if there are any technical difficulties during the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Just Councillor Hollywoodbred, Chairman.
Thank you. Declarations of interest by any members?
Councillor Bassett, I can see.
Oh, Councillor Bassett. No, you're muted, Councillor Bassett. You sound wonderful, but you're muted.
Sorry about those famous words. You're on mute. Item 12, Qualis Quarterly Monitoring Report as being a member of the board of Qualis. And similarly for item 8, Bakers Lane Leisure Centre, again for being a member of Qualis.
Thank you, Councillor Bassett. Any other members? No. Okay. If we could go on to the minutes of the last meeting, can I take those as being agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Additional reports of portfolio holders, item 5, Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Leader. I wanted to provide members with an update on our council-owned assets on Loughton High Road and the Broadway. Loughton High Road. In December 2019, EFDC purchased a freehold title of the Century Parade and 202 to 226 High Road, Loughton. The purchase consists of 18 retail premises, 1 first and second floor office tenant, and 9 residential flats located above the High Road retail premises, which at the time of purchase were granted to Qualis Living under a 999-year long lease. Unlike the rest of the council's portfolio, this parade has been hit by the effects of the COVID lockdown, with 6 shops affected. 4 shops became vacant, and tenants of the other 2 shops had gone into a company voluntary arrangement, CVA, which reduced the rental income received, due to the CVA dictating that a turnover rent is to be charged rather than a flat rent previously received. Of the 4 vacant shops, 3 now have offers, and matters are in solicitors' hands. 202, the former Pak Choi unit, and 204 are to be let to an exciting new food concept where food produce will be sold, but also used to create food for consumption within the premises. 208, the former hairdressers, has been let to another hairdresser, and 220 has been let to a local Indian takeaway shop. 224 remains vacant and is on the market. All the above lettings were achieved during lockdown and is a great result for the council. Of the 2 shops that went into a CVA, reducing our rental income, 1 we have managed to let to a national health and wellbeing operator at a market rent. The other unit, we're about to finalise terms with a strong national discount retailer that will bring footfall to the High Road and increase the capital value of the property. This will be achieved with the assistance from the council. With regards to the Broadway, the landmark building at the bottom of the Broadway has 7 commercial units on the ground floor, and we have now let 6, and the remaining unit is now under offer. The most recent letting was units B, C, and D, the former Mediterranean restaurant, to a local boxing gym operator who has a contract with Epping Forest College to teach a BTEC course and has reported strong membership take-up during lockdown with over 250 sign-ups. He also has a contract with another local college, and this will enable him to take on Unit A, which is now under offer to him. Unit E has now been let to a local businessman who is opening a tanning salon. Unit G was recently let to Wenzel's and is now fitted out and seems to be trading very well. In respect of the 68 shops on the Broadway, with the exception of 1 shop, which is under offer and in solicitors' hands, all shops remain occupied. During lockdown, we had to market the old McColl's unit at 47 to 49 the Broadway and had 8 offers, all at market rent and above, showing there is still great demand for premises on the Broadway. The letting of these premises to a Turkish supermarket recently completed. The post office will reopen shortly at 16 the Broadway. I'm sure members will agree that this is a good news story. I would like to praise our estates team for being able to find tenants during this last lockdown period.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Councillor Sam Kane.
Thank you, Leader. Just a quick update for members. Many of you may have experienced problems with your email on the iPad or on iPhone devices today. This, for a change, is not EFTC's fault. It's actually the fault lies with Microsoft. Microsoft will be working very hard indeed to resolve the issue, and I would be very surprised if it wasn't resolved by tomorrow morning. So bear with us. There's no need to contact IT. It is a known problem and it's in the hands of Microsoft. So hopefully everything will be back to normal tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good news. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick update on last week, the first week of reopening. As members will know, we made the car parks in the district free for that first week. That was well received. Economic development, amongst others, were out on the streets talking to shoppers and traders. They very much appreciated the free parking. The general feeling was a good number of people coming back shopping, but not too many to make it too busy. So generally, very successful first week back. Long may it continue.
Great. Yeah, I think everyone was delighted to see how positive it was on the high streets last week, and certainly some of our hospitality sector was booming over the past week, and indeed I managed to get in to have a pint in one of them at least. So I'm sure many of you will be using your high street on a regular basis, so that's good news. Okay, thank you for those additional reports. Item 6, any public questions?
No public questions, Chairman.
Okay, no request to address the Cabinet?
None, Chairman.
Okay, therefore we can move on to item 7, which is the report of overview and scrutiny. Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. The overview scrutiny met last week on the 15th, and we were really pleased as a committee that we were able to welcome the 4 members of the Epping Forest District Council's Youth Council who came along to give us an overview of the past year. Again, we were all very impressed with the way in which they put together their presentation and also the work that they've been doing during the year, even under the difficult circumstances of COVID. I gathered from what they were saying that they had met virtually on this for the year, which was quite impressive. They did refer to it as being a challenging year, which I think we would all agree with them on that and all aspects of life over the past year. Particular highlights included the hashtag Your Say survey, where they had shared young people had shared their experiences during the COVID pandemic. We've heard before about the My Life project. They've now taken this a step further and have now got a My Life C19 project, and a video has been put together which will be available from September, and it's hoped that this will help young people build up emotional resilience. They also talked about the funding and awards that they had achieved during the year from several organisations, including our council itself, but Jack Petchey had again recognised several of the individuals and work that they had done. And we also had a presentation from Sarah Garner, who is part of the mental health local services for young people. She is based in Epping at St Margaret's, but her area of responsibility covers a much bigger area of Essex. But she spoke about the work that they do, the services that they provide covering mental health and wellbeing support for young people aged from 0, she said, up to 18. But it also could continue up to the age of 25 for various young people. The committee heard about the various types of mental disorders and the importance of awareness of mental health issues being brought much more to the fore nowadays, and she praised the input that certain celebrities have had by bringing their own problems out into the wider domain, and this is a very positive step for mental health issues as a whole. So 2 very good presentations that we had. The Youth Council members stayed on to listen to Sarah Garner and also asked her questions as part of the question and answer session, which was good to have had them involved in that as well. Other items on the agenda, we looked at what was the first draft of the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report for 2020-21. We did have a brief discussion on some of it, but also members were asked if they had things that they wanted to have amended or looked at again to pass that on to Vivian Messenger in Democratic Services. We looked at the corporate plan, key action plan for 2021, quarter 4, and the discussion around various items of that. It was highlighted that there were more red status items than was normally the case or would normally be hoped for at this stage in the year, but some of this was specifically down to the issues around COVID, making some of the things not being able to be moved forward as would normally have been the case. Other things were discussed about going forward for next year. And next year already it has been agreed that an extra meeting be put in to the calendar for the 9th of June to include Qualis's 4-year business plan for 2021-25 and the business case for the transfer of corporate asset management services to Qualis and the Piers Lane site. This was just being highlighted as something for members to be aware of as we go into the new municipal year. And at this point in time, we obviously don't know how the committee will be formed at that point in time, but that meeting is highlighted so that it can take place before things go to Cabinet. So thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sartin. It was certainly a very full meeting last week and very productive. Members, you've got had the report. Can we take that as just been agreed and noted?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Sartin. Okay, so we move on to item 8, delivery of Bakers Lane Leisure Centre, pages 17 to 30. Councillor Avey.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to announce progress on the delivery of the new leisure centre in Epping at Bakers Lane. You have the report before you and a number of recommendations for your approval this evening. I take it that members have read the report. However, it's worth noting the following. As agreed by Cabinet in January, we will use our incumbent contractor, Places Leisure, to deliver the new leisure centre. This is good news and will hopefully replicate the successful development of the Waltham Abbey Leisure Centre, also undertaken by Places Leisure. This will require a deed of variation to our existing contract with Places Leisure for the primary reasons set out in the report and the second recommendation. As the Bakers Lane site is one of a number of sites to be developed in Epping, we will work with Qualis in a strategic delivery partnership, with Qualis occupying the role of infrastructure manager with responsibility for all 5 sites in Epping. The report sets out how we will proceed as quickly as possible and push this project forward to avoid delays. To this end, it is proposed that a budget of £600,000 is made available to the project to allow Places Leisure to start to engage with specialist third-party agents such as architects and designers. As you are aware, Qualis has estimated the construction cost of the new leisure centre at £25 million. Places Leisure will carry out a procurement exercise to appoint a suitable build contractor. I end on a note of optimism as we come closer to the delivery of this exciting new leisure centre for the residents of the district. Thank you.
Thank you much, Councillor Avey. Any members? No? Remarkably. Oh. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think the point that we just should bring up, well, a number of points we should bring up from my side of things. To note that we have already allowed in the budget funding for this work, as it called out in recommendation 3, that the budget capital programme was agreed at our budget setting council. I think the other thing to call out is recommendation 5. We've obviously had Qualis doing a significant amount of work, preparatory work, as part of the 5 sites in Epping, and including the sports centre site, which is how we've ended up with the layout that we have done. We have done significant work. The authority is delegated to Councillor Avey, yourself and myself to be consulted by the Section 151 officer to make sure that the money that we repay to Qualis for the work they have done already is justifiable. I think this is a good way of making sure that we cover the risks that we have, but do reflect the work that has been done. And I'm, like Councillor Avey, really excited to see this coming forward, being a great new asset for us in the district.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillip. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I was encouraged to see this. Councillor Phillips answered my first question. My other question was, Councillor Avey talked about progressing as quickly as possible. So I just wondered if you could sort of fill us in on what the anticipated timescale is if planning is granted in June.
Councillor Avey.
Thank you for that question. Maybe the officers might be able to help on that timeline. I think Andrew Small is on, and it's also James Warwick as well.
Okay, can I go to James, because obviously that's more his area, I would believe. James?
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. It's a phased approach. So we would look, once planning permission has been granted, we would look to start the procurement exercise. But as part of the phased development for the Epping sites, the multi-storey at Cottis Lane is the first phase. So as soon as the multi-storey is completed at Cottis Lane and open to the public, we would then commence construction of the leisure centre on Bakers Lane. So indicative timeline at the moment is probably summer 22. We're looking at starting the construction. We won't know. We're anticipating the build for the leisure centre is likely to be 18 to 24 month build period. But obviously, as the project progresses, we know a lot more.
Great, thanks very much, James. That's really handy. I mean, this is a great project for our council, and it's great for the district. It's also great for Epping as well. I'm really pleased that we're working with our partners on this one, because obviously people did a brilliant job in Waltham Abbey, and we look forward to the same here in Epping, which will be a great benefit for all the local communities around Faden Boys, Epping, North Weald. It will really be an asset to our district. So this is a good news story this evening. And of course, the important thing is we're working with Qualis to make sure all 5 sites in Epping are delivered in an orderly basis at the best possible pace. So that's good news. Members, you've got the recommendations before you. Can I take those as agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the acceptance of the tender contract 102 controlled door entry systems. This should have been Councillor Holly Whitbread, but therefore falls to myself because of her apologies this evening. Members, you've got the report before you. This is part of our maintenance of our existing council house assets. Any questions? No, therefore can I take those as being agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Then we get on to one of the larger substantive items of the evening, the Green Infrastructure Strategy on item 10, 47 to 64. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. The Council's emerging local plan sets out policies in relation to the provision and enhancement of green and blue infrastructure, the protection of the district's ecological assets and achieving high quality design. To support these policies and address the requirements to provide suitable avoidance or mitigation measures to manage any potential impact on growth on protected sites, including the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, the SAC. The Council have developed a green infrastructure strategy. And the purpose, the strategy will ensure that high quality green and blue infrastructure, including the provision of suitable alternative natural green space, referred to as a SANG, and site-specific projects are delivered alongside the growth proposed in the district. As such, it will be used to inform the Council's response to Action 6 of the Local Plan Inspector's Advice Note of 2, August 2019, which asks the Council to provide clear evidence that the necessary SANG can be delivered over the plan period, including proposals for SANG required in the first 5 years of the plan itself. The strategy will act as a guide in the design, development, management and implementation process to ensure the creation of a sustainable network to provide connections between communities, amenity space and the countryside, with a focus on landscape-led design. Changes following consultation. This report sets out the changes to the draft Green Infrastructure Strategy, which was agreed by Cabinet for the purposes of consultation on the 15th of April 2020. Consultation was undertaken in June and July of 2020, and the strategy proposed for adoption is attached at Appendix 1 of the report. In response to the representations received following consultation on the draft last year, a number of changes have been made, particularly in relation to the Epping Forest SAC. 1. More site-specific SANG guidance, recognition of SAMs and the need to include site-specific projects, and key updates to changes to the strategy to respond to the consultation comments, which included restructuring of the strategy. This was undertaken in order to respond to the comments raised through the consultation and from the Quality Review Panel. Consequently, whilst certain elements have been moved, the key components of the draft strategy have not changed. The strategy now consists of 5 parts and are summarised as follows. There's the primer, including green and blue infrastructure. Part 1, the implementation, which is enhancing our existing network, which focuses on community, town and parish councils and authority officers. Part 2, the implementation, landscape-led design focus for planning applications or applicants, designers and authority officers. Part 3 is the implementation, strategic allocations and suitable alternative natural green space, SANGs, as focus for strategic site developers, designers, authority officers and policymakers. And Part 4 is the implementation, infrastructure enhanced projects, focus on projects in Debden, Loughton, Baden Boyce and Buckhurst Hill to mitigate the effects of development on the Epping Forest SAC by enhancing the existing open space areas. So in summary, the report asks for the agreement of the Green Infrastructure Strategy as a material planning consideration, contributions towards site-specific projects in Loughton, Buckhurst Hill and Baden Boyce, which will amount to £716 per dwelling, a framework for partnership working and investment as part of the Council's climate emergency, and the delegate to planning authority holder to make minor amendments as required. Finally, this report and recommendation and Green Infrastructure Strategy was considered and approved by Stronger Place Committee at their meeting, which was held on the 29th of March 2021 without modification. And that followed a long discussion around the Green Infrastructure Policy where questions were put forward by members. So, Leader, that is the policy that's going forward, hopefully. Approved by Stronger Place, and we hope to adopt the recommendations as set out at the beginning of the paper tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bedford. Members of the Cabinet, any questions? Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of main questions. One which Councillor Bedford is already aware of that came from one of my residents. I would read the question out this evening. Unfortunately, it's in my Outlook email, which is currently inaccessible. I know Councillor Bedford has looked at that one. The second question I've received from the chairman of our parish council in Baden Boyce, who has today spoken to Nick Sheriff from the Woodland Trust He's responsible for the Thaden Boyce site, amongst others. He said he was surprised to learn that the Woodland Trust site was included in the proposed strategy, as he knows nothing about it, and he's asked that the Woodland Trust is at least provided the courtesy of viewing and commenting on the proposal before any strategy document is approved. My parish chairman says something appears to have gone wrong here, and if this is indeed the case, I would tend to agree with him.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Leader. What I will do is I will send over the response to question 1 in full to Councillor Phillip. But in summary to the first question, it's discussing it's about Thaden Boyce itself. The comment on that is, it is accepted that the site is not directly adjacent to the built-up part of Thaden Boyce and may not be attractive for someone wanting to take their dogs out for a short walk. However, more and more people are looking to get out into the open countryside and take longer walks. Thaden Boyce Wood is a fantastic asset for residents and in this part of the district, and we should be taking as many opportunities as we can to help people enjoy such places rather than keeping them hidden away. The size of the site and well laid out paths and extensive open areas deserve to be better used in line with the original purpose. Better usage will also help to make it a safer environment for everyone. And on that subject of that particular site, I must say that I do know a particular councillor that's sitting here this evening, Councillor David Wixie, who has actually walked that route from Debden, along with many other councillors that I do know, and officers indeed that have walked that route. So it'll be good to see that that actual walking route improved. And by way of improvement, we mean sort of not massive, great big car parking areas, because the idea is that you walk to it to use it in the first place. But it's about making it accessible for everybody to get on that route and actually take advantage of walking in the green open air and the open spaces. With regards, I should send, as I say, I sent the full question response back that was prepared by officers in response to receipt of that question. And the second one regarding the Woodland Trust, if you just give me a second. Thank you very much for that question. Page 22 of the Green Infrastructure Strategy states that there will be ongoing engagement with our partners, which includes the Woodland Trust. And I think it would be safe to say that we will check the email list, we will ensure that they were contacted, and we will get back to them. However, we are at this late stage now, and we won't delay. I do not see the point in delaying any further the adoption of the Green Infrastructure Strategy. We should be pushing on with this. And I cannot see, having spoken to Woodland Trust previously, to some of their senior executives, I was aware that they were aware of what was going on. It may be that just someone has been missed out of the loop, in which case we will make sure that person receives a full update as soon as possible. And I'm sure Nigel Richardson will take that on board, and we will deal with that first thing in the morning.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Phillip, are you happy with that response?
If I can just come back, Chairman, I mean, I have been through the supplement of the Green Infrastructure Strategy, and I do notice that there are no responses there from the Woodland Trust. Given that this is a significant part of our strategy, could I suggest that we perhaps modify our recommendations on this so that we make sure that the Woodland Trust has actually bought into our suggestion before we adopt this as a strategy? So we should agree the infrastructure strategy subject to getting the Woodland Trust's buy-in to it, because if they say no, and it is a big part of our strategy, it does leave a little bit of a hole.
Councillor Bedford, are you happy to do that?
Yes, I'm happy to. Councillor Phillip, have you got a proposal of the wording that you would like to put in?
Chairman, I shall think about that while Councillor Bedford answers some other questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Heap, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, thank you. Yes, on the whole, I think it's a good thing. It's quite a hard read sometimes. It's quite tautological. And occasionally I was thinking about Alice in Wonderland, where she was talking with the Mad Hatter. And the Hatter's remarks seemed to make no meaning, but it was certainly English. But specific questions. Who was in the quality review panel, and did any of them write the report? Because it might be that there's some kind of weird thing there. And point 2, charging residents of Loughton, Buckerstill and Thaden Boyce towards site-specific projects. Is that for Loughton Bucklersfield and Fagan Boys. Why isn't Chigwell included in this? And if you look at the totals at the back of the report, it seems that from Loughton and Bucklersfield you're looking for about 2.7 million, which is about a third of the amount raised by council tax. Sorry, that's what Bucklersfield and Loughton contribute, 2.7 million. So it's why should we be taxed living here in a slightly urban environment?
Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I'll try and answer this. I was trying to write the questions down because Councillor Heap, you do tend to ask about 4 or 5 questions at once, and 1 or 2 at a time would be rather handy.
Staccato style is my style.
Oh, well, fair enough. But the specific, I think your first question was around the quality review panel. And the quality review panel, as far as I'm aware, is set up independent. But if there's a problem with that, I will get Nigel Richardson's made a note of that. We'll get back to you tomorrow regarding that. It's an independent body, and they should be giving independent advice. Loughton Bucklersfield contributing to it, I believe it's done on the distance from the SAC. So the new projects that are coming in will be contributing to the area which is closest. So about the improvements within that scene would obviously be those that are closest to the SAC are contributing more. If I'm wrong on that, then I'm sure, again, Nigel will correct me and get back to you on that one tomorrow. And I think that's about that covers it, really, doesn't it? Any other question?
Mr. Richardson, did you want to comment this evening, or will you wait till tomorrow?
It was the distance for Chigwell against the SAC. They're not that far away. They're just down the road from Knighton Woods and Lord's Bushes, which is part of Epping Forest. So I don't see why they shouldn't contribute.
I think Councillor Bedford's correct. I mean, the author of the Green Infrastructure Strategy is no longer works for the council. Well, both of them don't work at the council anymore. But I think that is correct what Councillor Bedford is saying. It's the distance away from that part of the Epping Forest. So Chigwell is further away. In terms of the quality review panel, yes, I mean they've been used on a number of projects. Planning applications to be submitted, and the report does talk about their input as well. So, yeah, Councillor Bedford, you're correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Councillor Pond. Sounds brilliant. Muted again.
No, I don't know who's muted me. I didn't mute myself. I think this is a considerably better report than it was when we saw it in its first iteration. It had so many holes in before that it was hardly worth a very detailed consideration. But in this case, I think we've done reasonably well. And I'm assuming the process will be to submit this as part of the suite of documents that the inspector will consider in the local plan. But if that is not the case, please do correct me. Secondly, I wanted to, I agreed with Councillor Bedford, which has been a rare event in the last few months, that we do need to help people access and enjoy some of the good features of the countryside round and about our towns, and including the project linked to the Fagan Boys Wood. I am, however, surprised that the Woodland Trust weren't proactive in this, because it does seem that we have rather colonised their assets into our plan without their permission, but no doubt that could be sorted out. If you look at the plan on page 175 of the agenda, I don't know whether you have it in front of you, the Fagan Boys Wood is considerably to the east of the built-up area, as I think Nigel Bedford said. But a better way into the area would be to make use of the Loughton Shores, which are the two northwest to southeast linear woodlands between the M11 and Langston Road area, and those could be and used to be properly accessed by means of a crossing of the railway in Broadfield Shore, which was abolished in 1949. And if you look at the map, you will see that approximately an inch to the right, to the east of the words Jesson Green, is the remainder of that linear woodland, which unfortunately are divided by the railway. And they debouch into the Willingale Road playing fields and Lady Whitaker's Mead, both of which are owned by Loughton Town Council. And I think that I can say that Loughton Town Council have already established a permissive footpath around the Willingale Road playing fields, and would, I'm sure, be very amenable to the linking up of the last 50 or 60 yards between it and the shores. And that would provide a much more viable route into the area to the east of the railway. But in order to the crossing of the railway by either a bridge or a subway would have to be reinstituted. But I think that would be a very worthwhile project to add to the list. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pond. Councillor Bedford, do you want to answer that one now?
Yeah, I have to agree. I know that Mr. Richardson actually walked that route at the weekend, and it needs an upgrade. It needs a bit of work doing to it, and that's the proposal. That's why we're trying to raise the funds to do it, so it becomes a better community asset for people. And I was wondering if perhaps Councillor Pond could put a more detailed description of the way that he would like that considered forward, so that officers can take that plan away and consider it, because it does sound to me to be an ideal way of linking it all together. And the whole idea of raising these funds is to make things more accessible for people. It may not be easy for people from Baden Boys to actually get there and park their car and walk around the art feature and the trees that are there, but a lot of people tend to walk it from the Debden side. So if we can create a safe route for that, I think that would be a major improvement. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm very happy to do that as Nigel Bedford suggests. And of course, this is not a levy on Loughton, Chigwell and Bacchus Hill, as so much as a developer contribution to provide suitable green infrastructure to enable developments in those areas. So I'm very happy to proceed along those lines.
Thank you very much. That was very constructive, very useful. Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've actually got 5 points to make, but I'll start with the one which just been mentioned, because I did discuss at our last council meeting before lockdown. I discussed with Nigel Bedford about arranging a walk along the very route which Councillor Chris Pond has just described. And the offer is still there now that it seems to be safer to go out. So if Nigel wants to get in touch with me and take a walk along there, perhaps one Sunday, I could show him the shores. I have to say, the last time I walked along there, there's a footbridge which goes over a brook, and it's made up of 2 planks. So one of those planks had fallen into the brook, so it's a bit precarious unless there's been any repair work done on it in the meantime. But if Nigel wants to resurrect plans which we couldn't stick to because of COVID, I'm happy to resurrect that idea.
Sorry, Councillor Bedford, I'm going to say it is 1 plank now, Councillor Wixley.
Well, exactly. It was 1 plank when I walked along there, so the other plank hasn't been put back, has it? So to make it more acceptable for people to walk along there, there needs to be a better footbridge for a start. I think that the 2 shores in question, and they're actually mentioned in a book which I've got here, which is called Essex Full of Profitable Things. It tells the history, a bit of history of those shores, and also I think they're actually owned by Essex County Council. So we were probably looking at negotiations with the County Council as well as the Woodland Trust. So I think that's all I can say on that. The other things I wanted to say, that on page 170, there's actually an error in the report. It refers to cricket pitches on the Roding Valley Rec, and it says one to the northern end is Loughton Cricket Club. That isn't correct. Loughton Cricket Club is based in Loughton High Road. The cricket club which is there is actually the South Loughton Cricket Club, and they're a bit younger than the Loughton Cricket Club, but nevertheless they were formed in 1938 and are very active in the community in promoting cricket to youngsters. So I think I would appreciate their correct name in the report. The other thing I wanted to go on to is reference to improvements on the Roding Valley Rec and working with the town council. And perhaps I should declare an interest here because I chair the Recreation Committee on the town council, which is responsible for our section of the Roding Valley Rec. We have it on a 125-year lease from the district council. And I just wondered if this support included financial support, because there are a number of projects that we want to get on with there, which unfortunately, because of COVID, the town council has lost income, and we're having to sort of row back on those. But there are a number of issues which we could certainly improve the Roding Valley Rec if we can get sufficient financial support. I mean, perhaps one of the most important things is to relocate children's playground, which constantly gets flooded at the moment. And we also want to do some major work on the football changing rooms and also the car park that goes with it. So I'd be interested to know if financial support is available and when it would be available. There's mention of SANGs. I just wondered if when these SANGs are chosen, and I believe Jessel Green was one, if they could receive further protection through Fields in Trust status, which I believe the council has applied for in respect of the field by the new swimming pool at Waltham Abbey. And I think it would be encouraging if they could roll out that or apply for Fields in Trust status for these other green areas in the district. And I think the last point is reference to blue infrastructure. I can't see any reference there to working with the Environmental Agency on that, because when I walk about and see brooks around the area, there's lots of rubbish in them, but I understand it's a responsibility of the Environment Agency. And in that respect, I know that Councillor Stephen Murray is actually working very hard, trying to do his best with the Environmental Agency, because we got a serious flooding issue by the Loughton Brook, which is at the site adjacent to the Roding Valley Recreation Ground. So I think that's just about where I can finish up. I've probably said quite a bit and asked a few questions, but if they can be taken on board, it would be appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Wixon. I think some of them, what Councillor Bedford will say is that's for future discussion, but Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, I suppose the short answer is noted. But going back to point one, I'll see if Councillor Phillips can find some money in his budget to buy another plank. If we can't do that, then I think what we should do is defer that perhaps to Country Care, because I know Country Care have actually done quite a lot of work in North Weald, where they've provided access for local communities to cross over the brook at the back of some of the houses that leads on to the peer group land, which dog walkers use all the time. And it was a really well constructed footpath with actual like chicken wire on the top to enable people to walk without slipping over with muddy boots. So I think perhaps Country Care could be a good way forward with the upgrading of the bridge you're talking around. You were talking about the cricket club. Now there's two ways around that. We could get Mr. Richardson can do a minor amendment, I expect, to the paperwork to make sure we get that correct and call it the South Loughton Cricket Club. Or I could put an even shorter word in front of it and say a Loughton Cricket Club. The town council financial support, I don't think I'm in a position to actually advise whether or not there is financial support available for any of those projects you were discussing. The Roding Valley Recreation Ground is part of the improvements for the SANG areas that we're talking around. And I think if there's anything else that I've missed, I think that Mr. Richardson will come in very shortly and perhaps update anybody. And if there's anything we don't know at this stage, we can get back to you.
Can I just come back briefly, Chairman?
Councillor Wixon.
Yeah, as regards the plank across the brook. I think the footpath is probably the responsibility of Essex County Council. So it may be it's their responsibility, but obviously if Country Care can do it, but I guess that they would have to seek permission from the county council. But that's what I think is the case anyway.
We will look into that for you, Councillor Wixie.
Okay. Right, moving onwards, Councillor John Whitehouse.
Yeah, thanks. No, there's a lot to like in this, and it's particularly good to see the number of. I mean, a lot of people work quite hard to give consultation responses to this, and it's nice to see a document which actually is changed following consultation rather than just having a few minor tweaks. So, I mean, I welcome that. Just to follow up a couple of the earlier points on page 170, there's also athletics, which happens at the Roding Valley Recreation Ground. Perhaps I should declare an interest in that. But there is a grass pitch and an all-weather running track at the Roding Valley, and that's an important contribution to the leisure that happens and sport that happens there. And I agree with Councillor Wixley that in terms of the Faden Boys Debden route, the potential contribution the county council, given the land that owns there, is a bit underplayed in the section 4.2. I wanted to pick up two Epping things. And first of all, the South Epping Sang. I mean, the diagram isn't particularly specific, but I think we need to be clear that the Sang is not just buffer planting or against the motorway. I mean, if it's generally going to be used as an attractive alternative to walking over the bridge and using the forest land, something that's bang next to a motorway is not going to be a particularly attractive place to for people to do things. So I think we need to be careful that there may be sort of separate green infrastructure functions down there, some of which are to do with buffer, some of which are to do with alternative green space, and some of which are to do with delivering the recreational facilities and so forth that any development needs. And at the moment, the diagram sort of indicates that it's all sort of one lump that does all those functions, and I'm not convinced that would generate the quality of the Sang that would be needed if it's to have the effect that's needed. And similarly, it's not at all well explained or clearly explained why the town centre developments in Epping don't have a requirement for sort of natural green space. They're just excluded from any site-specific provision or any off-site provision or any contribution to things elsewhere. And that's not very clear. And clearly, anyone who lives in these developments will be, they live close to the forest and they will be using the forest. So some more clarity on that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Councillor Whitehouse. Make notes roughly that you're quite happy with the documents. Obviously, we note that the athletics down at Buckersfield there. The other thing is the South Epping site is saying not site specific. We might need to look at that in the future going forward, but of course that's not coming forward till 2028 at the moment. I think that's the proposed date for that. So there's time to think about that one. And with regards to Epping itself, don't forget Epping is right on the borders of the forest, and I know we're trying to stop people going to the forest, but getting a lovely new leisure centre so people will be able to enjoy sport in a different way by using the leisure centre in the middle of Epping. But I know that the developments to the other side of Epping, obviously they border the forest as well, so there are a load of natural walkways through to the, I'm trying to think of the name of it now, the burial park at North Weald, which links in through Faden, through Coopersale. So there are existing routes and things available for people to use, but we'll take on board the comments, and I dare say if a review comes up, they will be taken into account. I don't know if Mr. Richardson has anything to add to that.
Mr. Richardson.
To be honest, Councillor Bedford, I think you've summed that up well. I presume, Councillor Whitehouse, when you talk about the town centre sites, you're talking about the current applications that are in for the Bakers Lane, Cottis Lane and the residential developments, or were you talking further afield than that.
Well, I was thinking more about the local plan site, so the sports centre site.
Yeah.
Obviously, things have changed a bit since the local plan, but the St John's Road site, the civic offices site, all these will have an impact on the forest, but are not included in the mitigation in the same way that South Epping is.
Okay, well, we can look at that as part of the current application, so we'll consider that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor McCready.
Thank you, Chairman. Just returning to Councillor Wixley's rather precarious one-plank bridge. Yes, Country Care are now back at work with all the volunteers. At the moment, we're only having 6 people at each meeting, but from the 1st of May, we'll be back to full numbers. But what we found around here in South Epping is the West Essex Ramblers do a lot of work on keeping the footpaths up to scratch and repairing bridges. So West Essex Ramblers might be another source to help Councillor Wixley with his bridge. Thank you.
Great, that's most helpful. We don't want Councillor Wixley walking the plank, do we?
No.
One plank at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Heath, is it a legacy hand or a very quick question?
Very quick question. It's for Councillor Phillip, primarily. The amount required is about £1 million. We're borrowing £160 million on top of 183, nearly £500 million in debt. More than the British Virgin Islands get. Could we borrow another one?
Councillor Phillip, the answer is no, I should imagine.
The answer, Chairman, is that we don't need to. The green infrastructure is a levy on the developers for the developments occurring in those areas as part of the local plan. It's not an additional tax burden on the residents of those areas. So Councillor Heath can rest assured that he will still have money to spend in his local hostelry and visiting the hairdressers if he should need to.
That's it. So let's all be very clear. This is developers' money. This isn't our residents' money.
Exactly.
Unless the developer lives in the district, of course, because they live here as well. Okay, members, you've got the recommendations before you. Councillor Phillip, your amendment?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, Chairman, that at the end of recommendation 1, where it says to support the emerging local plan, then just say subject to review with the Woodland Trust.
Okay, Councillor Phillip, are you happy to second that? Sorry, Councillor Bedford, are you happy to second that?
Yes, that's fine by me.
Okay, members, so we've done amendment. Are you happy to agree to recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Councillor Lee's hand up.
Oh, Councillor Lee, you sneaked in there.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've been listening very carefully, and all this money that we're all saying that developers are paying, but it will actually come down to the residents in the end, because the more you charge the developers, the more they're going to put on the houses for the local people to buy, and you'll soon outprice them. So that's just my view.
Yep, but then we choose to live in an area, don't we?
Well,
Chairman, if I can possibly comment on that the overall contribution per dwelling is not going to significantly affect the purchase price to a resident or future resident, given the scale of the cost of dwellings in this district compared to the cost levied on an individual dwelling for this infrastructure.
Well put. Okay.
I completely agree with Councillor Lee. We have to remember that developers don't do development out of the goodness of their hearts. There is a limit to how much burden you can put on a developer for developing a particular item. What we have to do and what we've done through the production of the local plan is take a very strong look at viability to make sure that it's possible for developers to build these dwellings, to make their required level of profit, and still to contribute for the infrastructure and other factors like our affordable housing that are required.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Phillip. Members, I've just started doing the recommendations. With the amendment, can we agree to recommendations?
Agreed.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Item 11, Climate Change Action Plan. Councillor Bedford, it's your lucky night.
Thank you, Leader. the printout on this is terrible. It's so small I can hardly read it. The Cabinet report provides members with a summary of the objectives and purpose of the Climate Change Action Plan. The principal objectives being to demonstrate actions being taken by Epping Forest District Council to deliver on the pledge to do everything within its power to be carbon neutral by 2030 and address the declaration of the climate emergency. The document focuses on the identification of carbon emissions and actions to reduce them, both with the Council and across the wider district area. Climate change action requires a whole organisational approach. Therefore, development of the Climate Change Action Plan has involved officer input from many different service areas across the Council. Researching the challenging target of to be carbon neutral by 2030 will also require communities and businesses to take responsibilities for their own significant emissions reductions. The Council will therefore look to work with partners at all scales and influence emission reductions through direct initiatives, partnerships, using statutory powers, or by encouraging behavioural change. The report asks for agreement that the draft Climate Change Action Plan be approved for public consultation for a 6-week period and that the Planning Services Director, in consultation with the planning portfolio holder, be authorised to make minor amendments to the document. It also ensures that members are kept up to date on the plan's progress. The intention is that following a public consultation, it's been planned for June. Any updates arising on the final action plan will return to Cabinet to endorse its adoption.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bedford. Members of the Cabinet. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. As seconder of the motion, when we brought forward our climate declaration to Council, I'm very glad to see that we are actually moving forward with this and actually getting in place something that we can consult with our residents about whether we've got it all in the place. This is a fairly exhaustive document. It covers a whole number of things. It will certainly be improved by consultation in the district, and I would encourage all our residents as well as all our councillors to respond to this consultation. I do hope that as the regulations around COVID loosen up slightly, we may be able to do something a bit more interactive around this than we have been over the past 12 months. But I look forward to seeing what people think of this particular strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to make a comment about the consultation. Glad to see that when we talk about the 6-week period in June 2021, I think comments have been made previously about trying to avoid the summer holiday period. So, so I'm glad to see that in some ways, we are avoiding it somewhat. Just to comment on the consultation though as well, how will we be consulting with our residents for this important document?
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I will defer that to Mr. Richardson. I believe it's just through the normal process how we do all consultations. It'll be online, sent out to parishes and town councils to comment on. Apart from that, I'm not aware. Thank you.
Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, actually, I was going to delegate this to Francesca Edmonds. I think she's on the call. We have had a brief discussion about this, and Francesca is the author of the climate action plan that you have in front of you. If Francesca may deal with that one.
Francesca, that would be most helpful.
Yes, so the consultation will take a very similar form to the sustainability guidance consultation. So we'll be looking to have some engagement events with members, the youth council, and also the general public as well. And we'll look to have information online and distributed at key points within the district as well.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor. We also did consider whether we have a special meeting of the local council liaison committee so that Francesca can do a presentation to them as well. So that obviously opens it up to the local councils as well.
Yeah, can I say I think that might be helpful. I think what Councillor Patel was getting at, particularly as we start to unlock, whether there was something more or whether or not there might be some more public consultation.
We'll certainly go away and consider that. So yeah, we can take that up.
If we could, I think that would be sensible. At the end of the day, this is a very much if we're going to tackle this issue, we need public participation and we need public buy-in. I think that comes without saying. Councillor Patel, you're itching to come back, I can tell.
No, thank you, Leader. No, I agree. I think obviously as we do come out of this lockdown situation, we do need to consider better ways that we can consult with our residents. And I know typically the platforms that we use are via receiving responses via email. But I had I went and met with my local brownies back in September 19, and it was interesting actually some of the comments that they were making around harm to the forest caused by fly tipping and plastic bottles. And I'm just thinking that obviously it's important that we're producing a document here for our future generations, and I think it's important that we consider how we seek their views as well. I know we're looking at the youth council, which is great, but perhaps we could think of something a bit perhaps with our junior school members as well.
Okay, I think the point's taken, Councillor Patel, and we will look again just to be on the safe side that we're covering everything. Let's go onwards. Councillor Neville, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Chairman. And as the proposer of the motion some 18 months ago, maybe a bit more now, I'm very glad to see this document, and I'd like to praise all the hard work that's gone into it so far. It's a very extensive document covering a broad range of subjects. It is a work in progress, and I can point out a few things. One thing that is lacking a lot of in it at the moment, and hopefully that will be beefed up after the consultation, is the number of ways of monitoring our progress, because that ultimately, without monitoring our progress, we won't know that we're getting to where we want to go to by 2030, working in consultation with so many others. So, for example, on page 99, we could, for example, have the number of bus routes or the number of people using buses as an indicator of whether we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction, or number of homes retrofitted, number of homes built under using the sustainable guidance, and the monitoring of levels of each pollutant, which either can be done directly by monitoring or using academic work that is being used to monitor pollution in the forest, and gives us an indication of where we are with the various pollutants such as particulates or carbon dioxide, depending on what you're looking for at that particular time. I think this is a good document. I hope that this really does bear fruit, and that as we go along over the next few years, we will be coming back to it and revising it as we learn more. One question I do have to ask, I think probably of Francesca, is there's a number of areas where we don't have indications of our carbon emissions or the district's carbon emissions yet. Do we have an idea of when that sort of information will be made available?
Yes, I think you might be referring to the Scope 3 emissions from the council. Yes, so we are in the process of working with a consultant to look at those emissions this month. So that should be ready in the next few months. And there'll be some workshops taking place to understand how those emissions can be reduced so that the plan can be revised with those.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving onwards. Councillor Pond.
I do agree, Leader, with Councillor Patel's brownies, in that litter pollution has been a particular problem recently, and it is getting worse during the greater use of leisure facilities during the lockdown and the lockdown release times. But I think this is a useful way forward. I think the period of 6 weeks of consultation is a little on the low side, particularly if you do want to engage young people and community groups. I would suggest there's no real reason why we shouldn't extend the period of consultation rather, but I think it's a useful start, and I shall watch the responses with great interest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bedford?
Yeah, no, I take on board that point there. I don't know whether or not it's set in stone, but if there is a facility to extend that, then we'll obviously look at that, Councillor Pond. Sorry, I'm having to stand up because my back's gone and my hips packed up. So I'm sort of leaning on my desk at the moment. Yeah, I think there's some good points made there. There is some good information in the document. There's a lot of to be confirmed notes in there, which we take on board. But we have to start somewhere, and that information is now starting to come together so we can fulfil the report and start making more of it. Yeah, that's all I need to say on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Heath?
Thank you. Well, Councillor Neville's covered most of it. There isn't much encouragement in the report. I mean, it's a great thing. It's a very good start, thoroughly to be approved, and not really going to knock it. If we could go one step further than recycling and go for no packaging, which would be a great thing, particularly if you're using local shops like butchers and greengrocers and that kind of thing. You can take your own packaging, and you don't have to have even any paper. So it's a better way. That's it.
Good point. Thank you very much. Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, what I would like to ask about is on page 97, this reference to electric vehicle charging points and the infrastructure, because that's a question that one resident in particular asked me about. I notice it says work with Essex Highways to provide on-street charging infrastructure, because the vital point is to have discussions with the utility company, which I think in our case is UK Power Networks. I did attend a webinar that they put on probably about 3 months ago, and it was quite interesting. It did touch on charging points, and it showed that depending on where you want the charging point affects the price, because the nearer you are to a main electricity supply, it's obviously cheaper. But I just wondered if any discussions has taken place with UK Power Networks or any other electrical utility company.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bedford?
Yeah, actually, a lot of that work is not down to Epping Forest. It's actually down to County Council because it's on the highway side. I think at the moment we're probably looking more at banks of charging units at certain locations, i.e. certain car parks going forward, as opposed to actually trying to put them into lampposts, because then once we do that, then we end up with problems of who gets to the lamppost first, who unplugs someone else to plug yours in. There's a lot of complications, whereas if we have proper banks, I do note that there are a lot of charging points coming online now, and there is actually a UK map, I believe, of where charging points are located. And I've even noticed that quite recently here in North Weald, we did have a high-speed charging unit come online at our petrol station locally. And in fact, I see a Tesla in there the other day, and we all know Teslas are renowned for doing about 300 miles. So this bloke's probably travelled from somewhere up north, wants to recharge his vehicle before popping into London. But no, it is an emotive subject. People do get upset when they can't charge a taxi outside their house, or they can't charge and they want to use a lamppost. I think we have to be reasonable. What can we provide and where can we provide it? And that is why it says in there, Epping Forest District Council car parks and public visitor attractions, which includes private sector sites by our economic development team. So we will try and get in as many charging points as we can. There are a limit, but also we have to take into account public safety and network capacity. Can you imagine everybody trying to plug an electric vehicle in at 6 o'clock on a Monday evening that's my cooker blown out because I won't get anything to cook my dinner, and that comes first.
Good point. Okay, thanks, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you. Yes, I couldn't resist when UK Power Networks was mentioned. We have in Thin Boyce the worst in the whole of the eastern region service from UK Power Networks in terms of power cuts and frequency of power cuts. They were going to do something about it, but they then decided not to do anything about it. I will be trying to bring this forward for us to, as a council, to do something about it at the appropriate time. But I do have a real concern that if we have that degree of instability in the supply network, putting in a lot of charging points is going to cause a problem. That's all assuming the direction of the conversation that Councillor Bedford and I have had a number of times about whether electric vehicles rather than hydrogen vehicles are the genuine future for transport.
Great, thank you very much.
Chairman, can I just ask a question there? Does that explain why they won't have street lights in Thaden Boys?
Can't afford the bill. No, not at all. I'm sure Councillor Phillip would love to explain why they don't have street lights in Thaden Boys.
I am quite happy to explain why they don't have street lights. Number of times we've actually had a referendum in Thaden Boys on whether we want them or not, and the overwhelming opinion has been we do not want them. I suspect now it might be slightly different in that my esteemed colleague, the finance portfolio holder at County Council, I'm sure would not have enough money in his budget to fund the installation of lighting throughout Thaden Boys.
Exactly.
And might have enough money for a plank though.
And it maintains the attractive village feeling of Thaden Boys, doesn't it, John?
It does indeed.
Councillor Heath.
Yeah, it's just a quick thing. We have a lot of residents in Bucks Hill East, and it's a very densely packed area, who are willing to sign legal agreements to have small cars so that they can actually get under the 5 metre limit. So 4.8 is the general accepted thing. That most of the frontages are 4.8 metres, not 5 metres, which is only that difference. So that they can charge electric cars on their forecourts. Could we press Essex County Council for relaxation in that if they're willing to enter an agreement?
I would say there's a lot to be looked into there, because whether or not you could ask future owners to accept a 4.8 metre agreement is another thing. And I would recommend that's an ongoing discussion away from this. I like the idea because you've got an area where you've got a number of Victorian properties, but I'm not sure you can actually enforce upon future owners that requirement. So I think it's an area that needs further discussion.
And of course, all the residents of Buckhurst Hill could buy hydrogen-powered vehicles, and they wouldn't need charging points, would they?
Exactly.
Well, that's very true. But all of the residents of North Mill could provide. They'll buy methane-powered.
We are.
Okay. Let's get away from the abstract and get on to reality. We've got these recommendations before us. I think we've come up with some good points this evening.
Yep.
Can I agree to recommendations so we can get out to consultation?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we then go on to item 12, the Qualis Quarterly Monitoring Report. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Leader. This report represents the Q1 monitor position for Qualis operation up to 31st January. This is the first quarter of the second year. This report was also presented to Stronger Council Select Committee on 13th of April, and it was noted by them. For Qualis, last year was all about cost outlay, as they sought to develop governance and board structures, a business plan, obtain loan finance, and acquire their first commercial assets and trading services. With this phase largely complete, the second year of Qualis should look more representative of a normal trading year. At the end of Q1, Qualis reported a loss of 696,000, which is higher than their business plan forecast. The reason for this are clearly set out in the report and are largely associated with the larger than expected timeframe for achieving planning permission on the Epping Town regeneration sites. A date has been scheduled to consider these planning applications in July, and if successful, a large element of cost will be removed from the Qualis income and expenditure account, bringing it back closer to the forecast. In all, 24 out of 28 of the key performance indicators have been met, and therefore, noting the issues with planning, I am satisfied with the performance of Qualis against its targets. The rest of the information on performance is contained within the covering report and the board report, which is attached as an appendix. One final point to note, Qualis has requested permission from Epping Forest District Council as its shareholder to change its accounting year-end date by 1 month, bringing this forward to 30th of September. Because this better aligns to our budget preparation timeframe, we have agreed to this request. Therefore, in order to align the quarter dates to the new accounting year, the next quarter's board report will only cover 2 months, February and March 2021. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Questions from any members? Absolute silence. Therefore, can we accept this report? Oh, Councillor Wixley, you're putting your hand up. Sorry, Councillor Phillip first, then Councillor Wixley.
Thank you, Jim. I was just going to welcome the change to the Qualis financial year. It certainly was one of the challenges this year with the later information from the Qualis business plan and accounts in terms of factoring into our budget preparation. An extra month for that budget preparation, given that we sincerely hope that the contribution from Qualis is going to make a positive impact to our budget. It will be very welcome next year in terms of making sure we can get further on more quickly with the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Phillip. Good point. Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Got a couple of questions. Of particular interest to me is the Pearls Lane site, which gets mentioned on a couple of pages, I think 122 and 133. I wonder if the portfolio holder could give me some idea of what's being proposed on the site. I'm aware that there's been some work going on there because I received a complaint from a resident that she was disturbed quite early in the morning by whatever was going on there. So that's my first question, if Councillor Patel could answer that.
Councillor Patel, what's going on early in the morning?
Thanks, Councillor Wixley, for your question. I believe that it was just preparatory works on the site to look at the land and the so there was initial site preparation works there. What was your next question?
Oh, yes, I can understand the preparation side of it, but what's the preparation for? Can you be a bit more forthcoming on that?
It's obviously to look at well, essentially is to see whether there may be any hidden gems underneath the land, to see whether when they do come forward with a case or for a proposal on the site, that any potential costs that there may be with land contamination can be addressed and identified at an earlier stage.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Wixley. I'm sure as soon as Councillor Patel has something more to add, he will be in touch with the ward councillor yourself to discuss.
I appreciate that. Can I ask another question, Chairman?
Yes, of course. One last one.
Yeah. My second question is, I don't know if Councillor Patel can answer this, but I think housing repairs has been transferred to Qualis. I just wondered if you do a customer satisfaction questionnaire on that, because I've received compliments. One person very satisfied with the service they got from Qualis, and the exact opposite from somebody else, and that they were both plumbing issues. So I just wondered if you could let me know if we're actually sort of keeping record of any customer comments or any intention to do that.
Councillor Patel, I think we've got Councillor Holly Whitbread on the call now, so perhaps you'd like to comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll come in before Councillor Patel if that's okay, and apologies for my lateness. I in terms of kind of a customer feedback, I don't think any specific research has been done on that. But what I would say is that from what I've heard back as portfolio holder is in general, it's been pretty good. I think we've had a lot of good remarks on efficiency and a real improvement in kind of the customer experience in terms of having that technology and the efficiency of the service. But, you know, as with anything, you get the odd case where things don't go quite as smoothly as planned. But so far, I've had really good feedback, and I'm sure Sasha can probably comment in more detail about customer satisfaction surveys. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Patel, would you like to come in, or should I go to Sasha first?
Well, thank you, Leader. No, I was going to say that that Qualis do have will record the satisfaction of from our residents as in line with how we used to monitor complaints, compliments, etc. And I believe that they have this established as a KPI when they have their committee meetings. But again, I'm happy for Sasha to clarify that point further.
Sasha, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, sure. We do measure customer satisfaction. Our last recorded month was 95% satisfaction, but absolutely we pick up on where things haven't gone right. And we have a customer insight officer who's dedicated to that and following up complaints and making sure anyone that's dissatisfied gets an adequate response. So you can and will be able to see the monitoring of that customer satisfaction, and that will be produced in our KPIs.
Right. Is that going to any of the select panels?
Yes, I believe it goes to, actually, I might need to refer to Andrew there on which select panel it goes to. Andrew Small.
Andrew?
I don't think it actually does, unless it goes. Sorry, so the Qualis performance will come via the Qualis board report to this committee. But there may be monitoring of the housing function and the housing service through the select committee, I suppose.
Andrew, I'm sure Councillor Murray's sitting there and he's itching to say something, but it would need to really be seen by the relevant select panel, particularly around the areas of housing. It's a really important part of what we do, and we need to make sure and keep an eye on resident satisfaction. If that can be done. Okay. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. You've touched on what I was going to say. With more and more of these services being transferred over to Qualis, I would like to think that the appropriate select committee, if they wish, could take a detailed look at service performance in a particular area. A general report that you get is a more strategic and higher level report, but certainly we are used to, particularly in frontline services like housing repairs, receiving quite regular detailed reports about performance. And if the select panel wanted to do a detailed scrutiny in an area of service that had been transferred to Qualis, I would still like to think that that was available to us as councillors.
Councillor Murray, I'm really keen to see that's maintained. So that's an important factor of what we do, and that's important to our residents. So I'm sure Councillor Holly Whitbread will pick up on that, and certainly I'm keeping a close eye on it. So that will be done. Members, you've got the report before you. Can I take that as agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Super. We've got any other business. I've got no reason to exclude the public and press. Can I thank you all for your participation this evening and throughout the year?
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
Very much. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.